you'll turn up and down.
Yeah. Well, when I'm mixing, I'll usually start with maybe just the lead vocal, the drums and the bass.
Yeah.
So I'll have the idea of
the core.
Exactly. And I pay attention to my meter and my master bus that I have like way more headroom than most people might need.
Yeah.
Because I do the whole mix all the way through without even thinking about my parallel compression. It's not a part of the thought process until I've cleaned up everything and everything sounds as good as I can make it without being in the parallel world.
And then the parallel world gives you that edge.
Exactly. Then it suddenly it drives things out the speakers a little bit harder and gives it a little bit more color and character.
Amazing. So besides from templates, do you have anything else that you do to work faster or get inspired quicker?
Well, I definitely think it's no matter what software you're using or who you are as a producer, it's important to learn your tools and your software and whatever it is you're working in. So quick keys.
Yep.
And just to not be on the mouse at all is super, super helpful, because then for me, I work in Pro Tools and Pro Tools is at this point in time like an instrument. It's like my guitar.
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable with Pro Tools than I am with a guitar at this point. I've played guitar since I'm 12 years old.
Yeah.
But Pro Tools is way more comfortable for me than the guitar even to this day, just because it's a
muscle
tool.
memory.
Yeah, and somehow you can create and make sounds and make things happen through a touch of the button. When you're trying to be creative, speed is the key.
Yeah.
So I think even if
getting stuff out of your way.
Mm-hmm, you need to finish projects at the end of the day too. It happens to every producer. Everybody knows we all have projects that we've been working on for years that the ball got dropped. And I find that happens because in the moment when you're making something, you have, at least for me, I have that one day. I have that one moment where I'm with it and the vibe is there. Yeah. And then after I pick it up another few days later, I might still be able to work on it, but it's not the same. As much as you could strive to knock it out, knock it out now. Don't push it. Don't procrastinate and say this is a scratch track and I'll record later. I'll try to record a scratch track or record a person from the perspective hey, this might be the record, because he might put out that vibe that we'll never capture again.
Yeah.
So to have the speed to be able to get everything sounding right and in the computer onto tape or whatever as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And also then to move onto new ideas. And then, you work a 12-hour day, you make a song and you get to the end of it. You might want to fix some stuff later. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you say, this is where I was today. And this is who I am. And then if you don't like that and you need to make drastic changes, just make a new song.
Amazing. What's your favorite creative tool in the studio?
I guess my favorite tool in the studio is my studio. But I guess the strongest thing, the core and the backbone of my whole system and why I'm able to get the sounds that I get is my Apollo interface.
Yeah.
It just has a sound that is so clean and gives me the ability to load in these analog preamps and channel strips and capture the sound. I like capturing the sound coming in.
Yeah.
I compress vocals recording in. I don't EQ vocals cutting in, but if I'm cutting drums, I might EQ a little bit and use compressors. But the Apollo is like having in my small studio, having racks and racks and racks of gear to play with at the tip of my fingers.
Yeah.
So for me, that's just the most powerful thing. I could have a different audio interface that has less capabilities and still be able to make good music, but I'd be a step behind because I'm already committing to tones and sounds when I'm going in. And I think that's important also for being able to work fast and
flow
and capture the vibe, because that's the most important thing, is understanding no matter what it is that something's happening here in the moment, and we're like a cameraman trying to
grab that shot at the right spot in the right moment. Love that analogy. So is there anything you do specifically in your productions that you think gives you a trademark sound?
I've been told that I do, but it's hard to say because I just try to make my stuff sound as good to my ears as possible.
Right, and that's your taste. Yeah,
exactly. And at the end of the day, I'll listen to some other huge records and say, well, how can I make my stuff sound even better? And that's, I guess, part of the game, is just always trying to make it better. But I think the parallel compression plays in big to how the record is perceived by other people also, how it pushes. I think that I have certain techniques with delays and reverbs, and I'm not afraid to try to create character onto small things that are subtle. If I put a delay on someone, on just like a certain word or on the tails of lines or something.
Yeah.
I search for what the energy is of it. If it's a singer, maybe I need to do volume rides on the delays as opposed to just opening the mutes and closing the mutes.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, depending on the space in the record,
I automate throws a lot also, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, like it just helps bring the record alive.
Yeah, gives it that like the dynamic space, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
but I'm not afraid to like take that delay and then throw a distortion on it or put a channel strip on it and compress and EQ it. I'll definitely EQ all my delays.
Wow.
And I'm like in the middle of like this debate in my own mind with delays. What I like to do, what sounds right to me, is I like to take, like if it's a quarter note, I take the milliseconds off on one side by like 0.4 or 0.5, 0.6, depending on the vibe. And then kind of like it gives you this perception that the one side is hitting your ear faster than the other.
Yeah.
By just a fraction of a millisecond.
Right.
Which technically causes phasing issues. I forget the name of the
Haas effect.
The Haas effect, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a negative thing in that sense because when
it gives you a faux stereo.
It gives you a faux stereo, but also like I'm doing it on delays. I'm not doing it on the voice or on like a major part. So when I put it on the delay, suddenly it gives everything like a little tilt into the, like it suddenly makes things sound to me a little bit wider. And then when I put it in mono, I still hear the delay. Maybe the delay sounds a little bit slightly phased, but that kind of sounds cool also. And these days it's not like it used to be where people are listening in mono everywhere.
Yeah.
TVs are in stereo. Most things are in.
Yeah. It's like a debate on the internet. It's like, how much do you give viability to this mono test, right? Like some people are huge advocates and some people are saying like, whatever, it's 2019, you know? So
it is super important, I think, still. I think at the end of the day, people are listening on records on phones which are playing in mono. Maybe some phones these days, I'm not sure, like have stereo.
Yeah.
I'm not making the record though
I'm actually amazed. I have a MacBook Air and it's amazing how much stereo I can hear through those speakers.
Really?
It shouldn't like I feel like technologically it shouldn't be that good. But I mean, like obviously, but a phone, you know, phones sound like phones. They have the phone sound.
I'm not trying to make the music or make something sound good exclusively for the people listening on crappy speakers.
Yes.
But I want it to sound good everywhere, that's for sure. But it's
100%.
important that when you listen on the good speakers or in the car or like on headphones, that like you're in this world. So I treat these mixes like it's almost like a planet or like a globe, like it's a 360 degrees, like it's got forward and backward, left, right, up and down. It's got this whole picture. So just with the delay, for example, by doing that little offset, and maybe putting a reverb on the delay too. Mm-hmm. So something I could put it a little bit further back. I could put off to the sides where my vocal is still sitting in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't like having my delays sitting on top of my vocals.
Yeah.
And then it kind of interferes. So by offsetting them a little bit, then at least to my ears, I feel good about it. And I'll check in mono and I could still hear the delay. It's still there.
Yeah.
Or I could still feel it. At least sometimes I don't want to hear the delay as much as feel it.
Yeah. Right. Also, when you're saying like if you do like a slight nudge, you know, that could add like a shuffle feel to the way the delay, you know, feels, and that could add an extra element of rhythm, like you're saying.
Yeah, totally.
So, how do you balance your creative vision with what the artist is going for?
At the end of the day, the artist is the boss. Like, I could be the producer, but they're the executive producer because they're paying the budget, and so for me, it's one thing to make me happy and to think that I'm making everybody else happy. But if the artist isn't happy, then who was I serving? I wasn't serving his art per se.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because today we've lost a lot of the art behind the music. It's a lot of how can I just make this record for the world? Like how can I make pop as opposed to saying how can I make my art?
Yeah.
So I never try to step on the artist's toes. Like if they're completely off base or then I'll say we'll discuss it and try to make it happen.
Yeah,
try to find the middle ground.
I think a lot of that has to do with like what is the artist's goals with their song, and I think that's like a discussion worth having. Like I recently was working with an artist who told me, you know, it's all about the art, you know, and then we made this record that I thought sounded amazing, and then she came back to me and she said, listen, you know, like I need the drums to start a lot earlier, and it's like, wait a minute. You actually want this to be a pop song? And she said, yeah. I was like, okay, that's not how we started this conversation. And so we made it work. I added the drums earlier and then ended up adding like a trap hi-hat thing for like the first time ever on the second half. But it's like, the whole thing would have been complete. It was like almost like, inverse engineering to get the song to where it ended up needing to be because of that lack of clarity on the artist's goal. So it's like, yeah,
it comes from a slight world of inexperience. The more people have experience, the more they could tell you what they want right away. And
for sure,
and I greatly appreciate that. But sometimes an artist, especially inexperienced artists, it is about their art, but they're also very much influenced by the psychological impacts of their friends. And when you play that for someone, and they'll say whenever you're an amateur and you play it for other amateurs or people who are below amateurs, like people with no experience, they sometimes will look for something to say, even though there might not be anything to say. They'll have their critiques, that's great, but if they went and bought the record in the store, they wouldn't be listening to it in the same way as they're listening to it now. It's like, oh, my friend made this, my friend is here, physically, in front of me, I know this person, so I could probably level with them and give them advice and tell them what this maybe, but
interesting.
But where did that perspective come from? So I genuinely tried to tell people, be careful about who you play it for before it's done. If you're going to play for people, let it be done, because they don't understand all the work that goes into it and understand where you're holding with it right now. And they'll hear it and they'll say a million different things to change, in which case you're just drowning yourself, as opposed to...
And then the artist comes back to you with all these requests that are out of left field.
Yeah, I don't mind having lots of requests, but I do mind them coming from your friend who works at the grocery store, whatever.
Totally. No offense to people that work at grocery stores.
No, I love the grocery store. Yeah. Well, actually, that's one of the first places we bumped into each other.
That's right. Amen to that. Most of us tend to fluctuate between high and low levels of creativity. Do you do anything specific when you need to get inspired?
Drink coffee.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes I'll listen to records before I get started. In general, for me, inspiration comes from also time constraints being lifted. As far as if I go into something and I know I got 2 hours to get done before my next session comes in or whatever, then I'm already not in a very creative headspace. But if I get into it in the morning, or even at night after everybody's gone to sleep, and then my phone's not blowing up anymore and things like that, then that already helps. Sometimes I'll put on a stupid TV show and watch 10-15 minutes just to shake off whatever was going on,
daily baggage.
Taking the headache from the bus, or a call from an accountant who needs stuff, the business stuff. It's not fun. So for me, that's the biggest thing, is to try to get that out of my headspace. However I need to, watching TV, drinking coffee outside for a second, anything like that.
Taking a moment.
Yeah.
Amazing. Do you have go-to session musicians when needed?
Yeah, you're one of them.
Hey, thanks, man.
There's definitely a list of people that I have that are consistently, I use them a lot for stuff. And then there's also, I have to have different degrees of, how insane. Sometimes it's not always productive to bring in $1,000 guitar player for a song where the guy doesn't have $1,000 to play on it. Sometimes it's better to bring in a cheaper guitarist who could get it done, but still, I try to have multiple levels of, if I want to bring in the best session drummer in Israel, I could do that. I have his number. I know how much he costs. He's expensive.
Yeah.
But we'll get the song done within an hour. You'll never see anybody record a song so fast. 1-2 takes maximum, and then he's out the door.
Yeah.
Which is totally awesome. But not everybody could afford that, so I've got other drummers
Although you save studio time.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off. But sometimes some artists are more emotionally connected to the idea of having other musicians come in and play on their songs, where they want to have a relationship with the person.
Yeah.
And a conversation. Whereas when you bring in somebody that might be... everybody that I've worked with has been really cool. So I'm not don't feel like there's any negative energy, but the artist might not connect with him as much because he feels like he's coming in and out to be out of here in an hour, but he's really just coming to do his job and do it the best that he can, and he can do it that fast, so he will do it that fast. Right. But the artist doesn't necessarily always feel that. They want to feel like they're getting special treatment and they're being taken care of and they're having
they're building a relationship.
Exactly. So it depends on the vibe of the actual artist also.
Amazing. Who mixes and masters the music you create, and what influences that decision?
For the most part, I mix the music that I create. I always leave it open to them. Like whoever I'm working with always has the ability